When did you make that decision that you were going to be a U.S. Marine?
I had a conversation with a buddy about this, and obviously if you follow my channel or have listened to me previously, I'm a big believer in mythology and the hero's journey and so on and so forth, and believing in archetypes and so on. I think that's important for everybody. And then, you know, the hero's journey is one of those big ones, answering your call to adventure so that you can be transformed into the hero, right? When I was 16 and a half, my dad took me to the Yankees-Red Sox baseball game. It's the last game that they played at the old Yankee Stadium in New York City. It was September 9th, 2001. My dad, obviously, we talked about this, not a very loving, caring type of person. He brought me to this and it was like, hey, we're going to do this, son. We're going to do a father-son thing. This is going to be cool kind of deal. And I'm like, oh, crazy. This is great. Go to New York City. We've never really done that before. Go and watch this baseball game. And as I'm leaving the game on the bus, I remember we're a couple blocks down from the Twin Towers, and I see the reflection of the Twin Towers in the background. And this is literally, like I said, a couple blocks away. And I just turn and I look up at the buildings, and I'm just like in awe. I'm like, wow, this is insane to see, like just these feats of human ingenuity, right? Like this is wild to see. Fast forward 2 days, we're now September 11th, 2001. I'm in my Spanish class. I believe it's like 8:49 or something like that. My Spanish teacher, like, wheels and a TV. You remember the cart, the TV with the laser disc and the TV strapped to it and all this other stuff.
The big ratchet strap on it.
Yeah. And then plugs it in and goes and sits at the back of the class. And we see tower, I think it was Tower 2 that was on fire and all this other stuff. And I want to say, I think we saw the second tower get hit, where we figured out and quickly learned that this was a terrorist attack and it wasn't just an accident. And the alarms for the school just start going off, and they literally come over the speaker and they say, hey, school's closed. Everybody go home. Like, don't go to work. Don't do nothing. Go home. And I was supposed to work that day. I worked at a supermarket at the time. I was a stock boy. It was my first like legit legal job as a 16-year-old. And they closed down. And I remember seeing Tower 7 fall at like 5:45 that afternoon. And I remember sitting there. I just got my license and I'm driving my dad's car, like he has 2 cars. I'm driving. It's a beat up, shitty super station wagon. And I remember feeling this thing where it says, get up right now, drive to New York City and go help pull people out of the rubble. And I stood up in that moment to go grab the keys. And then all the fear just rushed into my stomach right then. Is like, what's your dad going to do to you? Right? You're about to leave for God knows how long. You're going to go into a quote unquote terrorist zone, right? You're going to miss work. You're going to miss school. Like, you're going to literally come home after like stealing your dad's car essentially. And you're going to get your ass beat worse than anything that ever happened. And that fucking feeling sat me back down in my chair. And then I remember feeling this pit in my stomach of just shame, right? Of like, you didn't answer this call, right? I remember this feeling. Now, fast forward a year from now, right? And I'm getting ready to graduate high school and I still have no clue what I'm going to do. I didn't have parents like most or some people did, where it's like, hey, son, what would you like to do after school? Hey, do you want to go to college? What kind of career field do you want to get? Okay, this is how you get student loans, or hey, we're going to cover X amount. This conversation never happened. It was just like 18, you're out of the house kind of deal. I'm choosing between right now to go become a state trooper in Connecticut or to become a chef. Don't want to become a chef because I don't want to work 12-hour days and get fat in the kitchen. And I don't want to become a cop because at the time I didn't really like cops, but it was like, hey, these are the 2 things that seem okay to me, whatever. Come to find out, you got to go into debt for all these jobs, and I didn't really want to do it, and blah, 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 blah. So I'm at a party, and I'm having a beer. We're sitting around a campfire, and I remember hearing someone say something in the background. This is the side conversation behind me. They're like, oh, my God, have you heard Jeff Cormier's coming back into town? They're like, oh, yeah, he just graduated Marine boot camp. He's coming home on leave. Oh, my God, man, that's so cool. Like, can you believe that? Like, have you heard, like, Marines need to, like, register themselves as lethal weapons when they come home and stuff? Like, it wasn't that piece that came up. It was more so the way that they were talking about him, of like, holy cow, like this guy, right? Like, look what he did kind of deal. Now, just to remind you of what's going on right now, Iraq had just gotten invaded. So it's like, shit, you got to go join. If you do this or go and join in the military, you're now going to go to war, right? So I was like, we'll see kind of deal. And like, I think 2 days later, I just got up and I just went to the recruiter's office and I chose Marines from that point. And I said, screw it. I don't care. I already live in a war zone. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stay here. I can't stay around these people. I can't stay in this household. I got to go. I got to go do something, and I got to go make money. Might as well go make some money doing cool stuff, right? Like shooting guns and XYZ. So the Marines was the best choice.
What was your MOS?
When I first joined, I was a 6821. I was a METOC weather observer. Then I became a weather forecaster. And then when I was in Iraq in 2008, I moved over to counterintelligence, human intelligence.
All right. This is where the story starts to turn up a little bit. So Iraq was your first tour, right?
Correct.
And then take us through kind of what happened to lead us to this next part you're going to get into, going deploying to Afghanistan.
So something happened to me in Iraq. I was a weather forecaster at the time. I was a just recently promoted sergeant. I was 21, 22 years old, I think, at the time. And I had been training my ass off to get in like some of the crazy shape possible. I was like, hey, if I'm going to Iraq, I'm going to freaking die a stud if I need to go and do this stuff. But as a weather guy, you don't really do anything, right? Like I sit on an airfield. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I had an important job, but it was just one of those jobs where it wasn't me. It was not anything I ever want to do. It's not what I chose. I kind of got roped into it. But in Iraq, I'm sitting there, I'm forecasting the weather, and I'm right outside where the Kazovac bird is. So it's a helicopter that's set up for picking up casualties. And right outside my base was Ramadi, and I get a call from the Kazovac bird that says, hey, we got to go pick up these 2 injured Marines. Can we go? That was essentially my job. My job was saying yes or no to these birds and to other things, because in the desert you have all sorts of crazy weather where it can ground birds really fast, and then you have an even bigger issue. So I saw this mist report come across, and it was 2 young Marines. It was a private and a lance corporal that had just literally stopped a cement truck filled with explosives to the brim. They stopped it at the gate, and the suicide bomber clacked it off, and they were about to kill all the Iraqi police and the platoon of Marines in this building behind. And they stopped them by engaging quickly. But those 2 lost their lives, unfortunately. So the MIST report came across and said, hey, we have these guys that are in bad shape. And I was already on it. And I was just like, go, 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 go. Like, go get these guys. And I remember in that moment afterwards feeling as a 22-year-old sergeant in this pretty much bunkerized location, even though, I mean, still 2008 Iraq, we're still getting mortared. There's still other things going on. But it was like, you're pretty far removed from the threat. And I was just like, you're such a fucking coward. Like, you're such a bitch. Like, you should be out there and you should be doing something where you are able to prevent these things from happening to these young men, right? To your brothers. So I remembered back at one point, I had a conversation with another guy, and he's like telling me all about counterintelligence, and that like snapped into my brain in that moment. I shit you not. That night I called back to Camp Pendleton, California to talk to CI Human Marine recruiter. And I said, hey, like, I want to move to this job right now. He's like, well, I got to let you know, it's going to take like 6 months, blah, 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 blah. You got to go through all this stuff. And it was like another full-time job, essentially, while I was in Iraq doing my job, to move over to this job field with like a almost 0% chance of getting in. One of the hardest MOSs to get into, I've got to be honest with you. And then once you go to the schoolhouse, it has the second highest attrition rate outside of BUDS. So this is like kind of creme de la creme of types of people and jobs in the military to go to become a counterintelligence, human intelligence specialist. And I went full throttle at it. I finished all of my stuff in 4 months while I was working in Iraq. I was completely 100% dedicated to becoming a CI Human Marine. And I got accepted. I got accepted into it. After I left Iraq, I came to Camp Pendleton, California, where I belonged to 1st Intelligence Battalion. I went through the schoolhouse after that, finding out that, hey, now the theater is going to change from Iraq to Afghanistan, and you're pretty much going to be like one of the forerunners of intelligence operatives to go into Afghanistan to collect information. So got out of the schoolhouse and instantly deployed to Afghanistan, attached to an infantry battalion, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. While I was in Afghanistan, though, we got the op order that we needed to take over a location from the Brits because they lost about 300 men in a year, which was crazy, sang in Afghanistan. So I got the oppo pretty much saying, hey, you're going to fly into Sangin as the sole. There's going to be 14 Marines going in to pretty much take over this entire area from the Brits. You're going to rip with them. They're going to give you all this stuff. And you're going to go in there alone as the sole intelligence operative, and you're going to go and pretty much give the entire brief up to the regimental commander, but it went beyond the regimental commander. Your reports and your reporting and your source operations are going to be pretty much like front and center for the push for Americans to go into Sangin, Afghanistan. Now, most people will sit there and they'll say they know. If you've ever seen the show Restrepo, most people know of that location, forgot the name of it, as like the deadliest place in Afghanistan. Well, that was the deadliest place in Afghanistan in like, I think like 2009, 2010. They say, oh, this was the deadliest location. Korengal Valley.
Korengal, that's right.
There you go. You're on it. Sangin was by far more significant acts than what was going on in Korengal at the time. Literally 2 or 3 days before I go into Sangin, I'm flying in on a CH-53. The PJs, Pedro 6-6 was shot down, killing all on board. This is four PJs, like special operations medics from the Air Force and their crew. They were shot down by a sniper that hit the tail rotor, I think, hit the tail, and that thing went crashing down. As a matter of fact, every morning that I woke up, the wreckage from Pedro 6-6 was right outside my door. So I was constantly wondering what was going on there. Now,